All right. All right. So that being said, we have folks still filing into the room. People have identified or selected their choices for the poll, so I appreciate you all doing that. So without any further hesitation, we will go ahead and begin today's grant solicitation webinar. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining today's grant solicitation webinar, the OJJDP Fiscal Year 2020 Reducing Risk for Girls in the Juvenile Justice System Solicitation. My name is William Moore, and I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. And as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of the Adobe Connect webinar platform and provide a few announcements to keep in mind. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be linked to our YouTube page in the future. You can go to our YouTube page with NTTAC and view past archived webinars. For any supporting materials, you can contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of important documents and resources related to today's solicitation webinar, please do so by locating the Handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here, you will find an FAQ and a troubleshooting document that will likely address any technical related issues that you may be having. Simply click on the name of the file and then click the download button. Please note that if you're joined not in the application but instead joined in an HTML or a web browser, you may have difficulty accessing the Handouts pod. If so, please be sure to contact the help desk. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a question and answer session where our moderator and presenter will address the questions that are posed during the presentation, but we are asking that you all please reserve your questions at the very end of today's webinar, and we will address them at that time, including any pre-submitted questions that came in during the registration process. We normally ask people to help us count if anyone has joined in the group. However, with social distancing occurring right now, I doubt anyone is joining maybe in a group or with multiple individuals. If you are, say, with maybe one additional person, then that's totally fine. If you can just indicate that, and we can keep an attendance of how many people have joined. But again, we do realize that most people are more than likely joining by themselves, which is totally fine. If you do have one additional person, then you're fine to indicate that in the chat there, and you can just type in, let us know so that we can have an accurate count of folks who joined. That being said, I would like to now turn today's grant solicitation webinar over to our presenter and moderator, Ms. Carrie Struck. Carrie, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, William. I appreciate your assistance. Welcome, everyone. We're glad for you to join us today. As William stated, my name is Carrie Struck, and I am going to be the one presenting to you today. First off, I work in the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and we envision a nation where our children are free from crime and violence. If they do come into contact with the justice system, we believe the contact should be both just and beneficial to them. Now, our mission, OJJDP's mission, is to provide national leadership, coordination, and resources to prevent and respond to juvenile delinquency and victimization. OJJDP supports the efforts of states, tribes, and communities to develop and implement effective and equitable juvenile justice systems that enhance public safety, ensure youth are held appropriately accountable to both crime victims and communities, and also empower youth to live productive, law-abiding lives. So the objectives for today are to provide you just a general overview of the 2020 Reducing Risk for Girls in the Juvenile Justice System Solicitation. I'll highlight some key eligibility and solicitation requirements and hopefully assist you with identifying tools and resources that will facilitate the application process. Okay, so this solicitation was released on March 31st, and all applications are due by June 1st. All of the awards are going to be in the form of a grant, and project periods can range up to 36 months. So a lot of applicants want to know, am I eligible? This is on page 1 of the solicitation. Those that are eligible are states and territories, units of local government, federally recognized Indian tribal government, nonprofit organizations, which includes tribal nonprofit organizations, as well as institutions of higher education, which includes tribal institutions of higher education. So the overview of the program is to enhance the capacity of applicant organizations to respond to the needs of girls involved in the juvenile justice system. Programs should provide prevention and early intervention strategies for girls who are involved in the juvenile justice system. So programs should be focused on girls that are in the juvenile justice system, such as probation, detention, correctional facilities. So a lot of applicants want to know how many awards are we going to give for how much money, and that can be found in the solicitation on page 7, the top of page 7. We plan on awarding up to 4 awards, so a maximum of 4. We will have a maximum dollar amount per award of $425,000. So that's for the entire life of the grant. If you choose the 36-month period, that $425,000 is for the entire 36 months. The total amount, for this solicitation is $1,700,000. That's for up to 4 awards. The start date for when the program could be implemented is October 1st, 2020. And again, the duration would be up to 36 months. So what is the goal of this solicitation? To reduce risk factors and to promote protective factors for girls who come in contact with the juvenile justice system, and to place them on a path towards success, stability, and long-term contribution to society. What are the objectives? You can find the objectives on page 5 of the solicitation. We want you to develop and implement direct service programs, which are based on best practices for girls involved in the juvenile justice system to reduce reoffending. We want applicants to enhance or expand existing prevention and early intervention programs to meet the specific needs of girls involved in the juvenile justice system. And also, we want applicants to develop, expand, or enhance targeted curricula for staff. The staff can be probation, detention center staff, law enforcement, judges, to ensure they have the skills necessary to implement these programs for girls in the juvenile justice system. Applicants should use best practices in a variety of services to focus on the needs of girls. Populations to be served are youth under the age of 18. However, as it is noted on page 2 of the solicitation, applicants may continue to provide service to girls who remain in the juvenile justice system under a state's extended juvenile court jurisdiction. So, of course, we don't, we want you to continue the services that you started with those youth under the age of 18 during your project period. So, priority consideration. As stated in the solicitation on, oh goodness, I'm sorry, I'll look at the page number. There is, I believe it's 5 for priority consideration. Yes, page 5, applicants that are submitted by non-government organizations should consider the importance of an established partnership. So you may have an MOU or some sort of other analogous document with a public juvenile justice agency at the local or state level. This will ensure close collaboration around referrals for those girls involved in the juvenile justice system and eligible for services provided by the proposed project. So those applicants that have submitted a fully signed and dated MOU or analogous document with the state or local juvenile justice agency will receive priority consideration. Now, if you do not have this, you can still apply. However, you will not get that priority consideration. Now, on page 6, there are OJP priority considerations, and those have to do with an application that address the specific challenges that rural communities face, applications that demonstrate that the individuals who are intended to benefit from the requested grant reside in high poverty areas or persistent poverty counties, and applications that offer enhancements to public safety in economically distressed communities or QOZs. There are several links on page 6 of the solicitation where you can find, more information on these OJP priority considerations. So what should an application include? You can see on this slide a lot of things. A standard form, an SF-424, project abstract, program narrative, budget information and the associated documentation. If you have an indirect cost rate agreement or if you would like to apply for the de minimis rate, you need to have documentation. A tribal authorizing resolution, if that is applicable to you. A financial management and system of internal controls questionnaire. A disclosure of lobbying activities. Applicant disclosure of pending applications document. An applicant disclosure and justification of DOJ high-risk grantees, if this is applicable to you. A research and evaluation independence and integrity submission, as well as disclosure of process related to executive compensation. So the SF-424 is a required standard form used as a cover sheet for submission of pre-applications, applications, and related information. The project abstract should summarize the program in 400 words or less. It needs to be written for a general public audience, and you should be submitting that as a separate attachment as part of your file name. The project abstract is not part of the 30-page max limit for your program narrative. That is oftentimes a question. Your project abstract should be single-spaced using a standard 12-point font with 1-inch margins. So the program narrative, Obviously, this is a very important piece of your application. There is a 30-page limit, which must include the statement of the problem, the project design and implementation, the capabilities and competencies, and your plan for collecting the data required for performance measures. All right, so within the program narrative, the statement of the problem should briefly describe the nature and scope of the problem that the program will address. You should use data to provide evidence that the problem exists, demonstrate the size and scope of the problem, and document the effects of the problem on the target population and the larger community. You should describe the target population and any previous or current attempts to address the problem. This information you can find on page 9 of the solicitation. So for the project design and implementation, applicants should be sure to detail how the project will operate throughout the funding period and describe the various strategies that they will use to achieve the goals and objectives. A timeline that indicates the major tasks associated with the goals and objectives of the project should also be submitted, and that timeline can be an additional attachment. All right, on page 10 is where you'll find information in the solicitation about the capabilities and competencies. You should describe the experience and capabilities of your organization and any contractors or subgrantees that you will use to implement and manage the effort. You should highlight any previous experience implementing projects of similar design or magnitude. You should also describe the roles and responsibilities of project staff and explain the program's organizational structure and operations. Additionally, as a separate attachment, you should include a copy of your organizational chart. All right, and on page 10 of the solicitation as well, there's information on the performance measures. So the plan for collecting the data required for performance measures. All applicants should detail how they will gather the required data should they receive funding. So for more information, there are these links. If you want to visit OJP's performance measurement page, oftentimes applicants have questions about that. And then, of course, a very useful resource is the Grant Application Resource Guide. I highly recommend everybody taking a look at those links. So another important piece of your application is the budget detail worksheet and budget narrative. The budget narrative should thoroughly and clearly describe every category of the expenses listed in the budget detail worksheet. You want to make sure you break everything down and it makes sense, that everything is cost effective and allowable. Again, awards will be in the form of a grant. And for this particular solicitation, there is no match requirement. You can go to page 11 of the solicitation to find more information on the budget aspect. All right, so what other additional information do you need to provide with your application? If you have a federally approved indirect cost rate agreement, you will want to attach that. If you do not, but you want to utilize the de minimis rate, you will want to provide that documentation. Tribal authorizing resolution, if that's applicable to you. Your financial management and system of internal controls questionnaire should be added as an attachment. Your disclosure of lobbying activities, your disclosure of pending applications, If it's applicable to you, if you're on the DOJ high-risk grantee list, you will need to provide that information and justification. Additionally, the research and evaluation independence and integrity, you will need to provide information on that. And lastly, the disclosure of process related to executive compensation. And all these additional information attachments can be found on page 11 of the solicitation. And other additional attachments have to do with those OJP priority areas, as you'll see here. The documentation of rural challenges, the documentation of high poverty areas or persistent poverty counties, and the documentation of enhanced public safety in qualified opportunity zones. You'll see the last three bullets have to do with timeline, position description, and then again this memorandum of understanding with a juvenile justice or child welfare agency, if that is indeed applicable to you and your organization. So, where and how do you apply? All applications must be submitted through Grants.gov. You need to register with Grants.gov as soon as possible because the registration process can take some time. Every organization who applies needs a DUNS number, and if they do not have one, you should call immediately. And the phone number and link are there for you. And we highly encourage all prospective applicants to sign up for Grants.gov to receive email notifications regarding this particular solicitation, because if things are modified, only those individuals who sign up for Grants.gov for updates will be notified. So here's the review criteria for this particular solicitation. The statement of the problem is awarded 15%. The bulk of things is the project design and implementation, as well as the capabilities and competencies at 30%. Your plan for collecting the data required for the solicitation performance measures is at 10%, and then the budget is at 5%. So what is the application review process? OJJDP reviews the application to make sure that the information presented is reasonable, understandable, measurable, and achievable, as well as consistent with the solicitation. Peer reviewers will review the application submitted under this solicitation that meet the basic minimum requirements. OJJDP may use internal peer reviewers, external peer reviewers, or a combination to review the application. Other important considerations for OJJDP include geographic diversity, strategic priorities, and then, of course, availability of funds. This information can be found on page 13 of the solicitation. So, if you have particular questions or you just want additional guidance, or you have a specific question that you're hoping to get clarified, you can reach out for assistance to the response center. Here's the number. They are open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and they extend those hours a bit on the solicitation close date. If you need technical assistance with Grants.gov, there's the information, the telephone number, the link. This is all in the solicitation. It can be found on page 2. As you can see, Grants.gov, the hotline operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so this is me. I'm going to refer you again after this webinar if questions do arise. I highly recommend that you reach out to the response center. That telephone number, you may want to write it down, but it is in the solicitation. But at this time, there were some questions that came in when you registered for this webinar, and I will go ahead and try and answer those. One of them was, what age can we serve? And I'm going to refer you to the top of page 2. OJJDP serves youth, so that is defined as 18 and under. However, as indicated at the top of page 2, youth involved in the juvenile justice system refers to youth younger than age 18 who have been arrested or referred for intake to a public agency, legally responsible for handling juvenile crime delinquency, and youth in need of guidance, treatment, or rehabilitation due to problematic behavior. Eligible applicants that propose to provide direct service to youth may continue to provide services to youth who remain in the juvenile justice system under a state's extended juvenile court jurisdiction. The next question was, what size of the organization are you looking at? And that's up to the applicant. The funding limit, again, is $425,000 for up to 36 months. And so the number of youth that you serve, that's all up to you and what you put in your application, and that's what will be reviewed. I had a question come in if we could provide more information on the qualified opportunity zone, and I will refer you back to page 6 where you can go to the link provided and find out more information. Again, this is up to the applicant where they are located, if the qualified opportunity zones pertain to them, and how many they want, are within their geographical area. I had somebody submit and ask if this would be a cooperative agreement, and the answer is no. This particular solicitation is in the form of a grant. Somebody asked if for-profits could apply for this particular solicitation. And if you go back to page 1 for eligibility, those entities that are eligible are states and territories, units of local government, federally recognized Indian tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, and institutions of higher education. A question came in regarding who was awarded in the past. We have had various girls solicitations in the past. However, this particular one is new this year, and so I can't answer that question in terms of, for this particular situation, who has been awarded, but you can go to OJJDP's website and look at prior year's funding and look at the various solicitations and find those organizations that were awarded. Somebody asked, what kind of services do you expect? And again, that is up to the applicant. You know your needs in your community and where you feel things are lacking. And so it's up to you to tell us what kind of services you are going to provide for your program with these funds. As indicated in the solicitation, there's a variety of services you could utilize this funding for: in-home, screenings, assessments, counseling, education, etc. Another question came in asking what the target population is, and it is girls in the juvenile justice system. Again, how do we define that? It's on page 2. Girls in the system under the age of 18 when they're, admitted to the program. So those are the questions I got ahead of time. I believe if you have specific questions now, you may type them in, and I will do my best to answer them. One I see is, what is the due date again? Your application needs to be submitted by June 1st. Anything after that is not valid. It says, will these slides be emailed to us? I believe you will have access to these slides. They will be put up for you to review. I'm not sure if they're emailed, though. I believe you will have to go to the link.
And really quickly, Carrie, sorry to bother you, just wanted to let folks know we do have the slides located in the handouts pod for download for today. Apologies to interrupt you there, Carrie. I just wanted to let folks know that we have them available for download right now in the handouts pod. Thank you.
Okay, great. No, thank you, William. I have a question here. What is the due date again? Again, all applications need to be submitted before June 1st. If awarded, when would the funds be released? You will be notified prior to October 1st, 2020 if you are awarded. And then once your budget is cleared, you have a final approved budget, is when you would get access to your funds. So it really depends on the application and how you submitted your budget and if it's approved. But usually within 1 to 2 months of being awarded, you have access to those funds. Applications should be submitted through Grants.gov. I have a question regarding the OJJDP objectives and priority areas. Regarding the objectives, again, that's up to you, the applicant, what you address. We have stated what we feel is important, and you should respond accordingly. In terms of should you address all the priority areas, again, this is up to you whether it's applicable, particularly those OJP priority considerations. You will receive certain priority if you do address all of them, but they may not be applicable to all applicants. I have a question regarding the budget narrative, whether this should be in the proposal or it needs to be Excel. I recommend that you look at the link regarding the budget and associated documents. OJJDP has certain budget line items that you should follow, and we want you to be as detailed as possible, breaking down those main line items. And then, yes, you have also a narrative describing those particular costs. Another question coming in regarding the priority areas, asking if you address more of them, will you have a higher level of consideration? And yes, the more priority considerations you have and you address, the higher, consideration you will acquire. However, you need to have a very sound application. That's what's reviewed very closely by our peer reviewers. It says, one of the questions, do we have a template for the program narrative? And the answer is no. That is up to the applicant. As stated in the solicitation, as well as in this webinar, the maximum amount of length is 30 pages. You have to have, 1-inch margin, 12-point font, but how you respond to the solicitation is up to the applicant. I'm sorry, I'm going through, I'm trying to read some of these questions. Unfortunately, there's some questions that have come in regarding particular programs, and we cannot comment on individual programs. If you feel like it fits within this solicitation, which is broader than usual this year, a lot of our solicitations we've really opened up. If you feel like it's a good fit, then please do apply. So there's been some question regarding the MOU. It again depends on your organization. So for some, if you have dual services and you feel like you do not need to utilize an outside organization, then you just need to reference that. So there's comments regarding the priority areas, and yes, they are what are listed on page 6 of the solicitation. There's question regarding can letters of support be accepted, and as stated in the solicitation and this webinar, MOUs or other analogous documents showing that there is a partnership and an understanding of the proposed project, those will receive priority consideration. There is a question, do we need a logic model? And a logic model is not required as an additional attachment this year in the solicitation. There's a question regarding in the program narrative, if you can include graphs or only narrative description. Again, that is up to the applicant, how they respond and what information you are sharing. Again, for those of you that this is your first or time applying for a solicitation with OJJDP, I highly recommend that you do the background work, I guess, in terms of getting into Grants.gov, registered, your DUNS number, things like that. There are various links that were referred to in the solicitation as well as today that can assist you with acquiring those necessary numbers and documents and things. Registration. There's a question, how long does it take to produce a proposal? That varies on the applicant, their program, staff, the teamwork. I mean, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think it varies greatly between various organizations, and it's going to differ largely for various applicants. Somebody asked if I could provide a proposal from the past. Again, this is a new solicitation. We've had other girls solicitations in the past, but the wording and the requirements and the goals and objectives have changed. So I don't believe an older model would be particularly helpful. There's questions in terms of, what do we mean by in the juvenile justice system? And I think in this webinar, as well as in the solicitation, there's some examples of what is considered. And again, it's you, the applicant, telling us why this fits your program. Again, we have questions regarding the objectives. It says, do you have to address all 3 objectives in your application, or can you just focus on one? Again, this is up to the applicant. We have stated what we believe are the objectives for this particular solicitation and are asking you to respond accordingly. There's a question regarding the targeted number of girls that you should aim to serve. Again, this is your proposal telling us what you believe you can do with the funding that we are providing. So there's questions about, is there a desire to involve parent education for the youth, the girls, in the juvenile justice system? And again, your project plan is what you're submitting to us. Various organizations are going to have different ideas. So we encourage you to share those with us, but we're not going to comment on those pieces because that's up to you. That's how you are to respond to the solicitation. We left it very open to being as inclusive as possible, and your job in the proposal is to captivate us and tell us why your program is going to assist with this target population and address those goals and objectives that we're hoping to obtain. There is a question regarding a video or tape of this webinar, and I believe William will give you that information. We have about 15 minutes left. Is there any
Yes,
other
and as
questions?
yes, and I'll mention really quickly to folks, Carrie, that yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be provided at a later date on our YouTube channel. My colleague Alyssa has entered the YouTube page where you can view this and other items or other webinars that have been archived as well. But yes, if folks want to continue to provide any questions, we can see what questions come in, Carrie, and see if anyone else has any other questions related to the solicitation.
The question regarding how many participants are required, this is again something that you as the applicant are addressing, and you're telling us this is the number of youth you will serve with this amount of funding over this period of time. This is not information that we put out there and you meet, but rather what you address and tell us. So there's a question, and it keeps referring to in the juvenile justice system, and that is correct. This particular solicitation, as indicated in the title and throughout the solicitation, is for girls that are in the juvenile justice system. And so prevention, that is a tricky word within the juvenile justice system, but I think as indicated in the solicitation and this webinar, you know, it's in terms of assisting the youth so that they do not reoffend. There's questions regarding the OJP priority considerations that are on page 6. And again, I'm going to refer you back to that in terms of what you need to supply in order to get priority consideration. I recommend that you check out those links. There's a question regarding the intergovernmental review. Again, I would recommend that you go back to the solicitation and any links that are provided to gather more information. There are questions regarding, you know, employment for this program. And again, it is up to you whether it's full-time employees or you also, you know, utilize consultants. You need to come up with your program plan and submit that to us and make your argument as to why that is best. There's further question regarding, you know, those OJP priority considerations, and I would recommend that you provide the data that you deem best for you, and that will justify those areas as to why you should receive priority consideration. All right, it seems like the questions have slowed down. We have just a few more minutes. All right, we have.
And just want to remind the audience that any questions that you'd like to submit after, please note that we have provided the response center information in the chat for everyone, and we will have that available for folks who want to ask any questions after today's webinar. They can submit it to the response center. Sorry to interrupt you there, Carrie. Just wanted to remind folks of that as well.
Oh, no, thank you, William. There's a question, what is the current name for this training? This is just a webinar on the reducing risk for girls in the juvenile justice system. So we're just having this to provide further information on this particular solicitation that applicants may want to provide proposals for, that are going to submit requests for the funding for this particular solicitation. Again, a question regarding the objectives. The objectives are listed on page 5 of the solicitation. And that is what OJJDP has decided are the objectives and deliverables for this particular program. How you respond to those is up to you as the applicant. Okay, well, it looks like no more further questions are coming in. I want to thank you all for joining us today and wish you the best with your application. Please do contact the response center if further questions arise. And I believe William is going to take it over from here to just close out this webinar and give you a few more slides and links for information.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Carrie. And again, thank you for providing this much needed information about this solicitation. My colleagues will, while I'm doing the last few slides here, provide the link to the response center again for those in the chat. But until then, let me make sure that everyone knows about a couple of other things that we have coming up just because I saw it in the chat. Let me let you all know about NTTAC and how you can contact us. The link here is live. You can reach us here at this link, and if you want to sign up for any other additional information as well, you could feel free to select the link here, and you can sign up for our listserv where you'll get updates about webinars that are coming up in the future as well. So simply click on that link there. You can also check us out on Facebook as well, and we'll be more than happy to help you there as well with any inquiries about future trainings and webinars that we have in the future. Do you have a training or technical assistance need? Well, if so, you could feel free to submit a request via the OJJDP's TTA 360 platform. The link where you can access the OJJDP's TTA 360 platform is located here on this slide. You can just simply click on that link and submit your TTA need there. Again, just wanted to note that we will have the webinar available on our YouTube page where we also have archived webinars. If you'd like to get any supporting materials or reach out, you can go to the OJJDP TTA Help Desk, or you can reach us at OJJDP-TTA@USDOJ.gov. And some people did inquire about the preventing trafficking of girls solicitation. If you were on this solicitation but you thought it was the preventing trafficking one, please note that that webinar isn't until next week. So that is April the 28th when that webinar is scheduled. Note that the links on this page are live, so if you'd like to register for that solicitation webinar to get more information about that particular solicitation on preventing trafficking, you can select that Register Now button there on your screen, and it will register you for the webinar. And you can also click the Learn More link there, and it will allow for you to get more information to learn more about it. Also, my colleague, Alyssa's, I believe, put the links in the chat as well for folks there too. Again, these are solicitation webinars, so please join them if you're looking to learn more about the specific solicitation that is coming out or that is released, and more available to ask your questions about the solicitation. So it isn't a webinar on preventing trafficking. It is a webinar on the solicitation for preventing trafficking of girls. And I just wanted to make sure that was clear for folks who are currently joining. Also note that we do have another webinar that's coming out with our colleagues with Children and Family Futures on May 19th. Feel free to select that Register Now button, and it will allow for you to register and learn more about that particular webinar coming up next month. We have about 4 minutes left, and so I do want to give an opportunity for folks to do one last poll question that we have at the very, very end here. I'll give folks maybe just a couple more minutes to click on those links if they want to register for those webinars. So I'll give you maybe about 10 more seconds to do that. Feel free to click on those links there, or if you have questions about these upcoming webinars, you can contact the help desk as well. But until then, let's go ahead and see if we can grab some people to provide some information about this particular webinar. So how do you plan on using this or applying this information from the solicitation webinar? And note that you can select multiple answers here. So feel free to select multiple answers here, and this helps us to gauge how you plan on using this information. So that being said, we're going to end a little early. I will leave this up just for maybe about another minute for folks. But again, I want to thank our moderator and presenter, Carrie Struck, for providing a lot of information for this solicitation. And I want to thank you all as our participants for today's webinar for joining us. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day. That being said, I will conclude this webinar. Everyone have a wonderful day. Please stay safe and please stay healthy. Take care.